The Philippines is much more than what it seems, much more than what some people may give it credit for, much more than what it now is. It's not an American territory or a Spanish colony. It's more than that. The Philippine Islands has its own history and heritage, a history and heritage that was nearly forgotten by the hundreds of years of Spanish conquest and American control. There's a reason why some Filipinos and Filipinas don't like the Spanish or American eras, because those eras only reflect the recent history of the islands. What I will discuss is what I know from my own experience and a valuable contribution by a Filipino who also seeks to expand the knowledge of the islands and let people know the hidden truth of the Philippines. In ancient times, the Philippines was the most southern point of Asia. Srivijaya was connected to mainland Asia through the Malacca Strait and trade with the Thai and Khmer peoples. The rest of Indonesia was not considered Asia, as once you get to the most western islands of the region, you have Pacific peoples, culture, and language. A good example is Papua New Guinea. So in many respects, the Philippines was the edge of Asia. The Philippines was the natural melting point of Asia. All peoples from the whole of Asia would gather in the Philippine region due to its natural seafaring routes. Peoples from China, Korea, Japan, Siam, India, and even certain Middle Eastern countries have evidence of being in the Philippines. This is why some people who do not fit the stereotypical Asian look live in the Philippines and are true Filipino. In modern times, Malaysia and Indonesia are considered to be melting pots as well, but these are fake, artificial European colonies which forced cultures together. The Philippines being a natural melting and mixing of the people and faiths. Islam was first introduced to Southeast Asia through the Malacca Strait and was being spread throughout the region and into the southern Philippines. But the Spanish put a strict halt to the Islamization of the Philippines. The Spanish knew what it was like to deal with Islam. Spain itself was under an Islamic caliphate. The Moors, Reconquista, happened only a few centuries before, and they did not want to deal with it in one of their colonies. Which brings up the question, why did the Spanish take the Philippines at all? The Spanish wanted a way to their colonies in South America by way of the Pacific Ocean. They eventually came upon the Philippines and used it as a stop-off on their way to Mexico. But unlike South America, none of the Philippines was truly under Spanish control at any one time. The Sulu was so dangerous and so difficult to control, it existed as a sort of autonomous region with only occasional Spanish communication. This would remain well into effect in the American colonial era of the Philippines. The Sulu Sultanate would only truly come to an end in the modern times when the modern nation of the Philippines would make a deal with the Sulu Rebels. That's what they were called now, rebels. The Sulu Peninsula being an autonomous region. Essentially, they can do whatever they want with minimal contact from the government. Let's go into detail about native Philippine dynasties. Yes, there were native dynasties in the Philippines. Some people may not think that such a thing was possible in the Philippines, but yes, it is true. I have some information provided by Titwan Pinoy. After reading this information, I decided to narrate the entire entry because this is the truth and people need to know this. This is about the Kingdom of Luzon. The Kingdom of Luzon from the years 1279 through 1571 was an ancient thalassocracy once located around the Manila Bay region of the Philippines. Its capital was Tondo, meaning Eastern Capital. Its territories covered most of what is now central Luzon, extending from the delta region that surrounds Manila Bay all the way into the interior along headwaters of the surrounding rivers in the provinces of Pampanga and Bulacan. Many Philippine historians question the term empire when applied to ancient Luzon. The Ming Dynasty, Chinese sources use the term guo, a sovereign kingdom ruled by kings and not chieftains. Yet the actions of Luzon are evidenced by Portuguese chroniclers in the early 1500s. Its effort to control and manipulate the politics and economy of neighboring countries around the Straits of Malacca is not the action of a mere kingdom, but rather that of an empire. Since China recognized only one empire under heaven, they recorded Luzon merely as a kingdom, as they did with other empires of that period like Japan and Siam. Luzon was at best a telocracy, a trading empire like Brunei and Malacca, or the earlier Majapahit and Srivijaya empires of Java and Sumatra. Luzon was probably derived from Lusong. Lusong was the old Kapampangan name for Manila Bay. The Kapampangan ethnic group who once occupied most of its northern and western banks were a seafaring people that traditionally gave names to bodies of water that served as their highways. The communities that grew from these are named after these bodies of water. The word lusong in both Kapampangan and Tagalog can be defined as 1. A mortar or wooden pylon used for pounding rice. 2. To plunge and or to ride with the wind or current in both Kapampangan and Tagalog. Manila Bay may have been named Lusong by both groups because the rivers within their settlements all plunge and empty themselves into it. 3. Also the land below the wind, according to other traditions, while Sunsong, China, referred to the above the wind, since Sunsong is a Kapampangan and Tagalog word which means to sail against the wind. In Chinese tradition, however, Lusong is made up of two characters, Lu, which means backbone or substitute, and Song, which refers to the Song Empire. In the southern Chinese dialect like Cantonese, Hokkien, and Chaozhou, the character Lu is added before a name to lessen its importance or value. For instance, Long, dragon, becomes Lulong, dragon-like, not a real dragon, when the character Lu is added before it. Therefore, the name Lusong means substitute Song Empire or Lesser Song Empire. The history of the Song Dynasty was compiled under Toktokan in 1345. In it, the Mongols recount the final and complete destruction of Nansong, Southern Song Empire, in 1127 through 1279 AD. During that year, the Mongol fleet crushed the imperial navy of the Southern Song Empire at the naval battle of Namen, and the loyal minister of the left Liu Zhifu committed suicide with the last non-Song emperor, the child Songdi Bing, rather than be captured by the Mongols. The Grand Admiral Zhang Shiji escaped with his Grand Armada, but were later annihilated by a typhoon while crossing the seas. Alternate sources refute the account of the destruction of Zhang Shiji's Grand Armada as nothing more than Mongol propaganda, since there were no eyewitness accounts of its destruction, nor were there traces left of its remnants. For most historians, the fate of Zhang Shiji and his Grand Armada remains a mystery. Contemporary Chinese historians in Guangdong are now even questioning the Mongolian accounts regarding Emperor Bing's death. Even though Mongol sources claim that the corpse of the last emperor had been found washed ashore along the coast of Shenzhen, his actual grave is yet to be found. Cantonese folklore expressed in the traditional Cantonese opera narrates an alternative account where the loyal minister Liu Zhifu tricked the Mongols by committing suicide with his own son disguised as the young emperor. The real emperor was said to have been smuggled out of the scene of battle by Grand Admiral Zhang Shiji, who will eventually return to redeem the empire from the invaders. The Travels of Marco Polo also recounts the escape of the last Song emperor across the ocean. Zhang Shiji's fleet and the last Song emperor may have escaped to pre-colonial Philippines and established the Luzon Empire, the Lesser Song Empire. Despite the conjectures regarding its origins, the Ming annals are clear on the actual existence of the kingdom of Luzon. It records that in the 5th year of the Ming Emperor Hongwu, in 1372, the kingdom of Luzon sent its first among the many succeeding diplomatic missions to the Great Ming Empire, 1368 through 1644, accompanied by the embassies of India's Chola Empire. In 1405, according to the veritable records of the Ming Empire, the Ming court sent envoys to the kingdom of Luzon to invite them to send emissaries to China. It was also listed by the same records as one of the places visited by Admiral Zhang He in the years 1405 through 1433. The Ming chroniclers also added the character for kingdom, Guo, after Luzon, indicating that it was once an independent and sovereign kingdom. Her rulers were acknowledged as kings who sent proper envoys and not mere chieftains. The Ming Empire treated the kingdom of Luzon more favorably than Japan, by allowing it to trade with China once every 2 years, while Japan was only allowed to trade once every 11 years. The kingdom of Luzon flourished during the latter half of the Ming Dynasty when China closed its doors to foreign trade. Foreigners were forbidden to send trade missions to China. Chinese merchants were likewise forbidden to trade beyond the borders of the great Ming Empire. Yet clandestinely, merchants from Guangzhou and Guangzhou regularly delivered trade goods to Tondo. Luzon merchants then traded them all across Southeast Asia and were considered Chinese by the people they encountered. The Portuguese, who came to Asia much earlier than the Spaniards, recorded their encounter with the inhabitants of the kingdom of Luzon and called them Lucios, Lusons. The Portuguese records that the Luzon Empire played an active role in the politics and economy of 16th century Southeast Asia, especially in controlling the trade traffic at the Straits of Malacca. The kingdom of Luzon's powerful presence in the trade of Chinese goods in the 16th century East Asia was felt strongly by Japan, whose merchants had to resort to piracy in order to obtain much sought-after Chinese products such as silk and porcelain. Famous 16th century Japanese merchants and tea connoisseurs like Shimai Shoshisu and Kamiya Soten established their branches here. One famous Japanese merchant, Luzon Sukezaemon, went as far as to change his surname from Naya to Luzon. Tondo had always been the traditional capital of the kingdom of Luzon. Its traditional rulers were the Lakandula, meaning Lord of the Palace. During the reign of Paduka Sri Bajinda Raja Danyang di Pertuan Bodica, 1485 through 1521, the Kingdom of Brunei decided to break the Kingdom of Luzon's monopoly in the China trade by attacking Tondo and establishing the city-state of Manila as a Bruneian satellite. A new dynasty under the Sailila was established in Manila to challenge the House of Lakandula in Tondo. When the Spaniards arrived in 1571, the unity of the kingdom of Luzon was already threatened by the uneasy alliance of the three kingdoms of Luzon, the Raja Matanda of Saipa, the Lakandula of Tondo, and Raja Suleiman III, the Raja Muda or Crown Prince of Maynila, and Laxmana or Grand Admiral of the Maccabi Armada. Powerful states like Lubao, Betis, and Macabebe became bold enough to challenge the traditional leadership of Tondo and Maynila. The Spaniards took advantage of the chaos, playing favorites with one ruler and pitted them all against one another. Rumor had it that the Spaniards had poisoned the Raja Matanda of Maynila so as to win the support of the Lakandula of Tondo, disregarding the legitimacy of Raja Suleiman III as Raja Muda. The Spaniards installed the child Baja Bagdo as the new king of Maynila. In 1571, Raja Suleiman III, the Raja Muda of Maynila, and Laxmana of the Macabebe Armada challenged the Spaniards to a naval battle at the estuary of Bancuse. The Spaniards were able to crush Raja Suleiman III and his Maccabi Armada due to the lack of support from the other rulers. The kingdom of Luzon was then quickly overtaken by the Spaniards. Its territories were carved out and distributed as spoils among themselves. Pampanga was the first Spanish colonial province carved out of the kingdom of Luzon, and the people who spoke one language from Tondo to the rest of Pampanga are now called Papampangang. After the collapse of the Kingdom of Luzon, the Spaniards were finally able to create their first colony in Asia, the Philippines, named in the honor of the Spanish King Philip II. The name Luzon was given to the entire northern Philippine island in memory of the former Kingdom of Luzon. The Kingdom of Luzon was said to have finally ended in 1571 according to Spanish records, yet the fortified cities of Lubao and Betis continued to thrive as independent principalities of the Kingdom of Luzon until 1572. In 1575, the Spaniards executed the child king Raja Bago and his cousin Lumalan as part of their response to Limahong's invasion. The Spaniards suppressed the ruling families of Luzon as to be in a secret communication with the Chinese private fleet. The Lakandula of Tondo also died in the same year. In 1586, the Spaniards crushed the revolt of former nobles of the Kingdom of Luzon in the province of Pampanga. The revolt was based in Candaba under the leadership of Don Nicolas Mananguete and Don Juan de Manila. In 1588, the Spaniards crushed the revolt of the nobles of the Kingdom of Luzon in Tondo. It was led by the descendants of the Lakandula and their kingsmen with the assistance of the influential Japanese merchants of Sakai. Many of them, including the Japanese Christian merchants Juan Gallo and Dionisio Fernandez, were executed. Some, like the ruler of Candaba, Dionisio Capulong, were exiled and their properties confiscated. In 1590, King Sata of Cambodia sent 2 elephants to the King of Luzon through his Portuguese ambassador and requested the Kingdom of Luzon's assistance in their battle against Siam. In the same year, the lords of the Kingdom of Luzon were said to have been corresponding with the Taiko-sama of Japan, Toyotomi Hideyoshi, begging for assistance to help liberate Luzon from the Spaniards. Hideyoshi responded by sending a letter to the Spanish governor of Manila demanding that the Spaniards leave Luzon quietly or face a full-scale invasion that would force them out. Ill-prepared for a Japanese invasion, the Spanish governor of Manila decided to appease Hideyoshi by sending gifts from the Americas, including the 2 elephants sent by the King of Cambodia. The rulers of the old Kingdom of Luzon who cooperated with the Spanish overlords became the principality of the new Spanish colony. To this day, their descendants still play an influential role in Philippine society. A large community and 2 burial sites dating back to the southern Song to the early Yuan Dynasty that was destroyed by previous volcanic eruptions had been partially excavated since the 1930s in Hyencia, Ramona near the Pasig River in Pampanga province. Due to lack of funds and government support, the site has been constantly abandoned to the elements and treasure hunters. Some archaeologists speculate that this may have been the original site of the Luzon capital of Tondo, it being located next to the Pasig River. Throughout the centuries, Kapampangan writers, historians, and poets all wrote about a lost Kapampangan empire that was destroyed by the Spaniards upon their conquest of the islands in the 16th century. Yet the name Kapampangan is hard to come by in any pre-Hispanic sources. This is understandable. The Spaniards carved out the province of La Pampanga from the former Kingdom of Luzon in 1571 and named it after the Indong Kapampangan River. Only were the inhabitants of the new colonial province then called Kapampangans. The study of Philippine history has for many years been Eurocentric. Most Philippine historians have gone as far back as the earliest Spanish records but have failed to look into the archives of neighboring countries such as Brunei, Indonesia, Cambodia, Thailand, Vietnam, Japan, and China. Their dependence on the English language limits the majority of Philippine historians from accessing volumes of material written in Chinese and other Asian languages. As a result, the history of the Kingdom of Luzon remains mythical in their scholastic psyche and still virtually non-existent in mainstream Philippine history. That's it. Very interesting. Extremely interesting. It makes sense that the Spanish would destroy the native dynasties in the Philippines because it would assert Spanish authority. This is why the Aztec, Maya, and Inca cultures were all destroyed by Spain in Central and South America because they were threats. The Philippine Islands had its native cultures, the Mai, the Confederation of Mayatayas, Kingdom of Manila, Rajanate of Bhutan, the Rajanate of Cebu, the Sultanate Mindanao, and lastly the Sultanate of Sulu. Sulu is often spoken of the most because it lasted the longest. It outlasted the Spanish and American eras, the only native Philippine rule to do so, as now the discussion will go to something more recent, the Sabah Dispute. For a moment, let's go back to Sulu, as a sultan would actually lease Sabah to a European power, the British, as the rights would eventually fall to Great Britain. The claim of Sabah would fall to the United States of America, inherited when the United States of America took control of the Philippines. And later the Philippines itself would take this dispute also. The British knew that land was leased, but they would not give the land back to the Philippines or to America. Instead, the British slowly integrated the land into the Malaya colony. Once Malaysia and the Philippines were independent, the claim would naturally be brought up again. Each time the Philippines brought the claim up, Malaysia would either ignore the claim altogether or give excuses as to why they should keep the Sabah region. It's a geopolitical reason as to why Malaysia will not return the lands of Sabah to the Philippines. The modern nation of Malaysia has at the moment around 27 million people living within it. The Philippines has around 94 million people living within it. Malaysia clings to its former colonial master, the United Kingdom, for defense, while the Philippines is under the watch of the United States of America. If Sabah was to be returned to the Philippines, then the size of the modern nation of Malaysia would decrease nearly by half, and would be at the mercy of Indonesia, which relations are not exactly that good to begin with. To try and throw out the claim, the Malaysian government has actually partially colonized the region by putting Malaysian people into it and deporting Filipinos. It's a problem that still exists and will not go away so easily. This is the true history of the Philippines. From its own dynasty having relations with nearly every other country in Northeast and Southeast Asia, to the Spanish colonial era, and to the era within the United States of America. The Philippines is a truly fascinating and impressive country that demands respect. I would like to once again thank the YouTube user that brought this information to my attention, to Juan Pinoy, as well as to the researcher who found out about all this information, Mike Palingian. So, what do you people listening to this narration think? Leave a comment and reply.